As far as classification and categorization of hadith is concerned, it is called as mustalah hadith, that is the science of hadith. The muhaddithin have classified hadith into various different categories. The three more important classifications, I'll tell you, there are many classifications. One is based on who is the original narrator. And according to Ibn Salah, he has classified the hadith into who is the originator. And number one, the highest, hadith Qudsi. It goes up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If it says that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, it goes up to Allah. It starts with the narrator, goes to the Sahaba, goes to the Prophet, and Prophet said, Allah said, that becomes hadith Qudsi, the highest category. Number two is the marfu hadith. The hadith which reaches, marfu means raised. It reaches to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. A chain of narrators are there, then it says the Sahaba's name, says that Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said. So that becomes marfu. The third category is mawquf, means stop. It goes to the level of the Sahaba. So if the hadith goes to the level of Sahaba but doesn't reach the level of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it is called as mawquf. That is stopped. That's the third level. The fourth is the maqtu, means cut off. It reaches to the tabain. So if it reaches to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's called hadith Qudsi. Reaches to the Prophet, it's called as marfu hadith. Reaches to the Sahaba, it is called as mawquf. If it reaches to the tabain, that is the next generation after the Sahaba, it is called as maqtu. So this classification is based on who is the original narrator. One type of classification. The second type of classification, according to Ibn Salah, is based on the number of chain of narrators. And it is divided into two types, the mutawatir hadith and the ahad hadith. In the mutawatir hadith, there are several number of narrators. The number is not specified. It says several at every stage. And this mutawatir hadith is divided into two further. Mutawatir in terms of wordings, mutawatir in terms of meaning. I'll give you an example of mutawatir in terms of wording. That means all the hadith that you find, the wordings are exactly the same. And mutawatir means at every stage there are various narrators. Like at the Sahaba level, there are various Sahabas who narrated it. Then there are various other people who narrated from the Sahabas. And the next level and the third level. One example is a very famous mutawatir hadith, which is a hadith mutawatir in words. That our beloved Prophet ﷺ said that anyone who deliberately or purposefully tells a lie in my name, he prepares his seat in the hellfire. Now this hadith, the words are same, but in Arabic, this is the English translation which may differ. But in Arabic, the words are the same. It was narrated by no less than 74 Sahabas. 74 different Sahabas narrated this hadith that they said that they heard the Prophet say this. 74. Now in the next level, you have much more than 74 people who have narrated it. Each Sahaba may have narrated it to many other people. So in the second level, you have more than 100 of narrators. Then third level, you have another few hundred narrators. So overall, there are hundreds of people who have narrated this hadith, and all those who have narrated, the words are exactly the same. So the scholars of hadith, they say, it cannot be possible that hundreds of people are narrating exactly the same words. It has to be correct. There is no difference of opinion that these are verbatim the words of the beloved Prophet ﷺ. So many narrators at every level. That means minimum narrators of this hadith are 74. Next level there are more than 74. Third level more than that. So minimum. So if there are several narrators at each level, then the hadith is called mutawatir. If the words are same, it's called mutawatir in words. Let's come to the second example. Mutawatir in meaning. The hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, when he said that for Fajr Salah there are 2 rakat, there are 4 rakat for the Zohar Salah, Asr Salah and Isha Salah, and for Maghrib Salah there are 3 rakat. There are various narrators at each level, umpteen number of narrators. Many Sahabas who narrated it, followed by tabain, but the words kept on differing. But the meaning was the same. Though the words differed, the meaning was the same, that in Fajr there were 2 rakat, in Zohar, Asr and Isha there were 4 rakat to be prayed, and in Maghrib 3 rakat. So here the Muhaddithin say it is mutawatir in meaning. Meaning is the same, the words may differ. So this was the type of mutawatir hadith, 2 types. In the Ahad hadith, it is further divided into 3 types of hadith. One is mashhur, second is aziz, and third is gharib. Now, all the Ahad hadith, they do not meet the criteria of mutawatir. The highest level of Ahad hadith is the mashhur, that minimum 3 or more narrators have narrated at each level. That means minimum number of narrators each level, if there are 3, then it is called as a mashhur hadith. That means that minimum 3 sahabas have narrated it. Then the tabain may be more than 3, but if minimum 3 is there at each level, it is called as mashhur hadith, or even more than 3. It can be 4 also, yet it's called a mashhur hadith. If it is several, then it becomes a mutawatir. But if it's 3 at each level or 4 at each level, it is called as a mashhur hadith. It is the highest in terms of Ahad hadith. The second level in Ahad hadith is the aziz hadith. In aziz hadith, there are minimum 2 narrators at each level. There's a chain of narrators. And minimum 2 sahabas have narrated it. And at the other levels also 2 or more have continued with the chain. So that's called aziz hadith. The third category of Ahad hadith is the gharib. That means at any one stage, only one person. Other stages there may be 10, 20, no problem. And the best example is the hadith of Bukhari, which was narrated by Hazrat Umar, may Allah be pleased with him. It is the first hadith of Sahih Bukhari, volume number 1, book number 1, hadith number 1, that our beloved Prophet ﷺ said, Innamal amalu bin niyyah, that your actions are based on your intention. All the hadith, there are hundreds of hadith, all hadith that are there, it goes to Hazrat Umar, may Allah be pleased with him. Says, Umar, may Allah be pleased with him, said that the Prophet said. Below, after Hazrat Umar, may Allah be pleased with him, there are many narrators. But at one stage, there is only one narrator. No other Sahaba besides Hazrat Umar narrated this, so this becomes Ahad, a gharib hadith. It's a Sahih Hadith, it is there in Bukhari, it's a Sahih Hadith, but it is Ahad Hadith and a gharib hadith. All the chains reach to Hazrat Umar, may Allah be pleased with him. There is no other Sahaba who narrated this. So this is called as Ahad gharib hadith. Ahad and gharib hadith. So this was the second type of classification based on number of narrators. There are various classifications. I'll just come to the main one which we are discussing. The third type of classification of hadith is based on authenticity. In this type of classification, there are 2 types of hadith. One is maqbul, accepted, and the other is mardud, which is rejected. In the accepted type of hadith, there are 2 types of hadith: Sahih Hadith and Hasan. In the Sahih Hadith, there are 2 types of hadith. That is the Sahih Hadith with continuous chain and Sahih Hadith with a broken chain. In the Hasan again, there are 2 types: Hasan Hadith with a continuous chain and Hasan Hadith with a broken chain. So these are the categories of the Maqbul Hadith, accepted Hadith. If it falls under Sahih or Hasan, it is accepted as a hujjah, as an argument for you to accept it. If it's a Sahih Hadith or Hasan Hadith, and if the Prophet has prohibited, it becomes haram for you. If the Prophet has commanded you, it becomes compulsory for you, or it becomes mustahab for you. The second category is hadith which are Daif or Maudu. Daif has again got various categories. Daif, Jiddan, Daif because of the chain of narrator, Daif because of inconsistency in the narrator. Various, there are multiple different types of Daif hadith. Time will not permit to go into detail. Same with Maudu, there are different types. So basically, the third type of classification based on authenticity, and there are other classifications also, makes a hadith which is maqbool, hadith which is mardud, which is rejected.